Hi there, my name is Caitlin Reed. I'm the Selective Mutism Program Director at Thriving Minds. My colleagues also specialists in the treatment of selective mutism, and I will be sharing a few kind of creative exposures that we have identified in this time of COVID. So I'll let them introduce themselves and we'll launch into it.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Becky Thompson, and I am also a therapist who works with kids with selective mutism and also the clinic director at our Chelsea location.
Hi, I'm Lisa Garg, and I also work with kids with selective mutism, and I'm at the Brighton location.
Thanks, guys. So I think we have always been very creative with the types of exposures and practices we have been planning for our clients with selective mutism. That means we've done things like go and practice talking with a police officer, a uniformed officer, doing safety questions. We've gone into schools with our clients. So we've been well versed in this kind of creative necessity, and also this time has made us get even more creative. And as we were sharing those ideas with one another, we thought, our families that we work with, families in the broader SM circles, as well as clinicians might also be interested to hear some of these ideas, so that way you can apply those for, some great brave practices too. So we've lumped our ideas into some things that are more specific to individual practices and some tasks that are more group or peer dyad types of practices. So we're going to get into the individual practices first.
So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to describe some Faden modifications that can be used over video. And so I have 3 different modifications that I have used. So one is where the parent would be the one facilitating a Faden over video. And so what they would do is they would turn their video on near where the kid is sitting and have the new person on their video at their house, but start off sitting across the room, and then they would fade them in to where they're sitting right by the video and then join in the game. And one thing that I have found that is helpful with this is if the parent is also texting that new person through the fade-in. So that way they're not having to kind of say it out loud right in front of the kid, which might make them a little more nervous. Another way is where the therapist facilitates the fade-in over video. So the therapist is on video with the child, and they're both at their own home, but the therapist also invites that new person to join the video meeting. And again, that new person would start at their home on the opposite side of the room, and then fade in closer to the video and then join in the games. And the therapist is the one facilitating all of that. Meaning it's often helpful if the therapist has the new person's phone so they can text them and guide them through the fade in. The last modification.
Or using like the chat feature in Zoom, right?
Yes, there is that chat feature as well that you can use for that. And actually with that, you can do a private chat. So the therapist can be typing messages to that person where the kid won't see it pop up on their screen. So yes, good point with that one. And then the last option would be where the therapist is facilitating the fade-in, but the therapist starts in a separate room with the child, and the parent is on a separate video call with that new person. So this one is helpful if, let's say, the child, as soon as they see that person pop up in the video meeting, if all 3 are on the same video meeting, they shut down and they just can't tolerate that, then it's a way of breaking it down further. So again, the therapist and the child are on video together, and they might be in a room, 1 room over from the parent or 2 rooms over, whatever you need, and the parent is talking with that new person in another room. Now, one way that the therapist can fade the child into the same room as the parent would be using sticky notes on the floor. So that way the therapist can just say, okay, so time to go to the next sticky note while we're playing this game. And it would be helpful for the therapist to know ahead of time how many sticky notes are there between the room they're starting in and where the parent is. So that way it gives them kind of an idea of how far they need to go and how many sticky notes they need to go. So those are just a few different ways of being able to facilitate those fade-ins over video.
Perfect. So I'm going to share next. I think, another thing we've had to get super creative about is how to play unique and engaging games over a virtual format. So, we have lots of options when we're face-to-face that we can do to keep kids verbal and keep kids engaged. And some of those can be translated easily to virtual formats, but other ones are a bit more tricky. So I wanted to share some ideas of games that can be played during fade-ins or during virtual exposures. And I'm going to share some options on my screen. So here is the first set of just virtual friendly game ideas. So some of these you can do easily with the screen share feature in Zoom or other video conferencing software. So for example, with I Spy, if you have a picture of an I Spy board, you can easily just share that screen so both people can play I Spy. Same with Candyland. If you have a picture of the Candyland board, you can share your screen and both be playing along the same board. I'll show you an example with Spot It. So I'm going to share a different screen with you. I have taken pictures of the Spot It cards, and so you can play the same way, just showing pictures on the screen where you have the two Spot It cards. You're both looking to find what's the same there. So similar to how you would play in real life.
Becky, can you send me those? Those are great. I've just been holding two up in front of the screen. Yours is a much
another creative way, right? If we have the Spot It cards, but that's just a nice way to use the screen share feature for some of those games. Other options that you can use screen share for are Scattergories and Mad Libs. Those are both apps that you could then share on the screen and play together. I really like to use the whiteboard feature in Zoom for a lot of different games. The two that I do the most often would be Pictionary and Hangman. So I can kind of show a little bit what that would look like. So if you share your screen in Zoom, you can click the whiteboard option, and it gives you the chance to draw things that other people would see. And you can also have the person on the other end contribute to this drawing as well. They can take over remotely and draw pictures for Pictionary, or they can add to the Hangman board. So those are some of the ones that I like to do the most and I think work really well virtually. And then the last thing I wanted to share was just some ideas for apps with kind of built-in puzzles and games, things that you wouldn't have to kind of set up on your own. They're already kind of built into these apps. There's kind of Pictionary options on House Party and other card games. Caribou has lots of puzzles and coloring and things you can do collaboratively that are built in to these apps. And I think all of them are free during this time.
Yeah, those are some fantastic ideas. And I know we're just kind of always constantly looking for things that translate well, things that we're used to doing, but also translate well into this new virtual format. A couple of quick things that I'll add. One of the more unique ways that I've been doing virtual games is I've had families have two devices set up. One is angled at the child, so of course I can be listening for their speech, and I can be, watching if their mouth is moving, but if their volume is not particularly high just yet. So one is angled at their face, and the second iPad is angled at the activity, just so if they're, the family is playing a game, and that way I can still be, involved in it. Just somebody obviously has to move my piece for me physically, but it gives me the chance to get a closer view at what's happening. So that's worked out quite well too. And I also wanted to share a couple of ideas from one of our other colleagues who has a child that she's seeing in treatment for selective mutism who has an immunocompromised family member. And they've been doing a lot of visits through the window with that family member. And she said that it's been really great to work on like facial expression and also volume, because they're trying to make sure that both can hear each other through that, through the glass, which I think is a great way to keep in touch and also keep challenging kids. So those are just some other unique opportunities as well. And so kind of with that in mind, I'd also like to share now, once we have kids who have been really doing well with those individual level practices, it's probably time for us to bump it up a notch. So I like to share quickly about one of the new opportunities that we're doing as a clinic to facilitate those types of goals. Actually, two. So one, for the last several weeks, I've been running online classrooms because we know that so many schools have turned to virtual formats, and we also are trying to replicate that so we can give kids the right types of practice opportunities. They can speak in their new virtual school formats. So I've been doing online classrooms, which are primarily exposure-based. So I am teaching a little lesson. My lessons are about recognizing feelings and understanding the way that our thoughts impact our feelings, and kind of simple educational content related to anxiety. And that, I think, has been a really fun and engaging way to get some of this group type of exposure. And a second one that actually I'm pretty excited because we're just about to launch live are a series of new online extracurricular classes. So, you know, because we are a specialty clinic, we get a lot of families who have interest in our program from all across the country. And normally people can travel to us to get access to our services, which of course is a lot more of a challenge right now. And so I've been trying to find more and more ways to do these virtual services so people who are elsewhere can have access to them. So with this, these new online extracurricular classes, we're partnering with a number of different instructors, a karate instructor, a ballet instructor, an art instructor, a computer programming person, to give kids virtual online extracurricular experiences. And that instructor is going to be at the helm, and my role is going to be much more of a consultative one. So it's not necessarily going to be treatment per se, but the intent is for me to kind of help that instructor craft the right types of practices in their lesson. And I'm going to be on the lessons also to just kind of coach and nudge if that instructor, you know, needs some additional support because they're newer to this population. So it's something I'm really excited about. We should be doing this through the entirety of the summer. So I'm really hopeful that, you know, we'll have a lot of great brave practicing opportunities, and that certainly will capture a lot of kids' interest with these lessons that I've kind of selected. So go ahead, Lisa.
So I just want to talk briefly about another way to work on group with kids, especially when they're not yet ready for a larger group, is by doing peer practice with just two kids together. And so I've been doing this a lot with some of the different kids I work with who have selective mutism, where I will just invite two other kids into a meeting and I'll facilitate games between the two kids. Or you could even do it with 3 kids. So just working up towards that group format and giving them that extra practice.
Go ahead, Becky, actually.
So I wanted to share about another group opportunity that I have been focusing on. So Caitlin mentioned a lot of group opportunities, which mainly have been for younger age groups. So I have been focusing a lot on group opportunities for older age groups. So for kids with SM as well as social anxiety. As we know right now, our interactions are super limited to people that we're really comfortable with, the people that we live with. And so we're not getting those opportunities for exposure practice out in the community with less familiar people, with people that, you know, we don't know at all. So I wanted to craft some of those opportunities within the group setting. So I've been hosting a virtual social hour, which is primarily exposure based to offer some of these opportunities for interaction with unfamiliar people in a virtual way. So every week is different, but every activity focuses on, challenging ourselves to step out of our comfort zone, to introduce ourselves to other people, to share our opinions, to, find common interests with others, to present, to disagree, to debate, to do all of these things that are really, really challenging in a semi-structured setting. So that's been really beneficial, I think, to give a lot of kids the opportunity to build some of these skills, even when it's not happening naturally in their day-to-day. So I think the other piece that I wanted to mention here is the opportunity to use breakout rooms as a way to, in groups, if there's a need for separate spaces, separate settings. We imagine in the real world, we can just kind of step outside, go to a different room, take a break. That's not as easy in virtual formats. So the breakout room in Zoom is really beneficial for doing just that. If you're using Zoom, you, as the host, will see at the bottom, as long as you've enabled it in your settings, you will see an option that says Breakout Rooms. When you click on it, it will ask you how many breakout rooms you want to create, and if you want to assign the groups manually, or if you want Zoom to just do it automatically. So if you have a need for people to kind of go into a separate space, then you can use breakout rooms and, assign them as needed. And you can have everyone come back together after a certain time limit, or you can manually change it, but it's just a nice option to have.
Yeah, in the early days when we were first getting acclimated to the use of Zoom, I hadn't heard of the breakout room. So I was setting up 2 separate Zoom spaces so that if a kid was really struggling, I would be able to, in the group, be able to pull them to a separate location where we could, work through what we wanted to say and, a reasonable goal. But I've also had to so I've been on my Zoom meeting and then also FaceTiming a kid in because each kid is different, and the expectations and the demands that we place have to be realistic for them. And for that particular kid, we had to FaceTime in, and that was the way that worked more effectively for them. So in any case, we just wanted to, again, offer some of these ideas. And, if you have others, we are certainly willing to hear those. And, I think we're just really passionate about this population and excited and eager to find ways to make sure that we get kids practicing. We know that consistent and frequent practice is the way that we reduce anxiety. So it's important to provide as much of that opportunity and in this kind of unique and creative way as we can. So thanks again for sticking with us today. And we're just thankful for your participation and hope to talk to you soon.